The rain came down hard that Friday morning in Rainier, Georgia, a relentless southern storm that soaked the sidewalks, filled the gutters, and turned the sky into a dull, gray wash. The kind of storm that made people sleep in a little longer, cancel errands, and pull their blankets tighter. But for Mrs. Edna Murray, sleep was not coming. The 81-year-old widow lived alone on the ground floor of the Birchwood apartment complex. She had her rituals, morning coffee with powdered creamer, calling her daughter in Tennessee, and listening for the sound of Amber Delaney stomping up the stairs above her around 7 a.m. like clockwork. But this morning, there was no stomping, no music, no sound of the old stair rail squeaking as Amber always tugged it with force. Mrs. Murray frowned and glanced at the rotary phone on her kitchen wall. She had already called twice, straight to voicemail. By 8:15, unease began curling in her chest. Amber was a sweet girl, loud, yes, but kind, always bringing in groceries for her, even carried her walker up the stairs once during a power outage. Mrs. Murray had heard her say yesterday she was heading to her aunt and uncle for dinner, something about a special occasion. But something didn't sit right now. She grabbed her umbrella, slipped into a raincoat, and slowly made her way to the second floor. Her knees ached with each step, and the wooden stairs groaned beneath her. When she reached apartment 2B, she noticed it immediately. The door was slightly ajar. That wasn't like Amber. She knocked. "Amber, honey, you all right up there?" Her voice was quivering, almost swallowed by the sound of rain pounding the tin roof. No answer. She pushed the door open slowly. "Amber." The apartment was dim. The overhead light in the living room flickered once, then went dark completely. The room was a mess. A coffee table overturned, a vase shattered, books and magazines scattered like a hurricane had passed through. Mrs. Murray's heart thudded painfully in her chest. Then she saw it, a hand, small and pale, with chipped red nail polish, sticking out from behind the couch. Mrs. Murray didn't scream right away. Her breath caught in her throat, her legs trembled, and for a second, her body refused to process what her eyes were seeing. But then she opened her mouth, and the scream ripped through the silence, loud and raw, waking the building like an alarm bell. By the time the police arrived, the small apartment complex was swarming with officers. Yellow crime scene tape stretched across the stairwell, and neighbors huddled beneath umbrellas in the rain, whispering with wide eyes. Amber Delaney, 19 years old, bright, beautiful, a college sophomore, was found lying on her back in a pool of blood. Her eyes were wide open. There were bruises around her neck. Someone had tried to choke her first. Then they used a knife. A single, clean stab wound to the chest, directly into the heart. Detective Meredith Cole stood in the doorway, rain dripping off the brim of her wide-brimmed hat. She surveyed the scene, methodical, cold, calculating. Her jaw was tight. "Time of death?" she asked without turning. "Between 9 and 11 p.m. last night," replied the coroner, crouched over the body. Meredith let out a breath. She opened the door to her killer, she said quietly. No forced entry, no signs of a break-in. Her partner, Detective Dwayne Mercer, young and full of nervous energy, nodded solemnly beside her. She knew whoever did this. Meredith's eyes scanned the room again. The chaos, the quiet, the body of a girl who should have been in class that morning. Rain tapped against the window like a slow, ticking clock. This wasn't random. This was personal, and someone in Amber Delaney's life had just shattered it with a knife. Detective Meredith Cole crouched beside Amber's body, her knees protesting as she leaned in close, eyes narrowing at the small details others might miss. The girl's face was frozen in terror, mouth slightly parted, as if her final breath had been caught mid-sentence. Meredith had seen dozens of corpses in her career, some accidental, some cruel, but something about this one felt different. Quieter, sadder. Dwayne stood behind her, flipping open his notepad, trying not to look directly at the corpse. He wasn't green. This wasn't his first death, but a dead 19-year-old girl in her own apartment? That still hit hard. Finger bruises on her neck, the medical examiner mumbled, glancing up from his crouch. But those weren't what killed her. That stab wound was straight through the heart. Clean fast. Meredith nodded slowly. She fought, though. Look at the overturned table, the broken vase. She didn't go down easy. She was small, Dwayne added, but strong enough to make a scene. Meredith stood and scanned the rest of the apartment. The space was small but cozy. Framed photos on the wall, string lights over the bed frame, a bookshelf filled with college textbooks and beat-up romance novels. Her purse sat open on the kitchen table. Inside, a cracked phone with no lock, a college ID, a wallet containing $37 and a neatly folded $500 in cash. Meredith raised an eyebrow. Cash? Dwayne asked, peering over her shoulder. Yeah, just sitting there. No note, no envelope. You don't just leave $500 lying around in plain sight, unless it means something. She moved to the phone, thumbing through the recent calls. One name stood out, Aunt Cheryl. The last incoming call, made at 6:04 p.m. the previous evening. Meredith slipped the phone into an evidence bag. We'll pull her records at the station. Text call logs. I want a full picture. Dwayne moved to the entrance. Hey, check this out. On a small table near the door sat a disheveled pile of mail. Grocery ads, a utility bill, and a plain white envelope, sealed, no stamp, no return address. Meredith peeled it open carefully with gloved fingers. Another $500 in crisp bills. No message. No explanation. Looks like she was getting these regularly, she muttered. Dwayne frowned. From who? That's the question, isn't it? A knock at the door broke their concentration. An officer led in a trembling Mrs. Murray, wrapped in a raincoat and clinging to her umbrella like a lifeline. I live downstairs, she stammered, eyes flicking to the body on the floor. I found her. I didn't touch anything, I swear. Meredith softened her tone. You did the right thing, ma'am. Can you tell us anything about Amber's schedule? Last time you saw her? Mrs. Murray nodded shakily. Yesterday, around 6. She was heading out. Said she was going to her aunt and uncle for dinner. Wore a nice dress. Too fancy for school. Did she mention what the occasion was? Dwayne asked gently. No, the old woman whispered. But she looked tense, like she was bracing herself for something. Meredith glanced at Dwayne. A dinner with family, she said quietly, and $500 cash on the table. Dwayne closed his notepad. This isn't just murder, is it? Meredith didn't answer. Her gaze returned to Amber's lifeless body, to the way her hand reached out from behind the couch like she was still trying to fight, still trying to hold on. No, this wasn't just murder. This was betrayal, and the truth was hiding somewhere close. By early afternoon, the rain had lightened to a drizzle, but inside the precinct, things were just beginning to stir. Detective Meredith Cole sat at her desk with a folder full of printouts and photographs. She stared at Amber's college ID, a grainy headshot of a girl trying to smile, but failing just a little. It wasn't forced. It was guarded. Amber Delaney, 19. Sophomore at Rainier County College. Major, social work. No criminal record. No known drug history. Worked weekends at a bakery called Sweet Bella's downtown. Lived alone in a rented one-bedroom apartment that she shouldn't have been able to afford on her wages. I ran her employer, Dwayne said, walking over and dropping a file in front of Meredith. Bakery manager said she was a solid worker. Always early. Customers loved her. But he raised his eyebrows. Said their paychecks barely cover gas. No way she paid rent in that place on Sweet Bella's money. So someone else was helping her, Meredith said, flipping through bank statements. But who? She didn't have a roommate. Landlord confirmed she paid cash. Always on time. Always exactly $500. Just like the envelopes, Meredith murmured. They drove to the bakery next. The little shop on the corner of 4th and Maple smelled like cinnamon and sugar, but the mood inside was flat. The manager, a stocky man in his 50s with deep bags under his eyes, rubbed his temples as he answered their questions. Amber worked weekends, Friday through Sunday, did morning shifts, never complained, but she was distracted lately, tired, like something was weighing on her. Did she talk about any problems? Meredith asked. The manager hesitated. Only once. Said she was getting out soon, moving somewhere nicer. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. More like relief. She ever mentioned who was helping her financially? He shook his head. Nah, She didn't talk much about her personal life, but sometimes she'd show up wearing these expensive shoes, designer bags. It didn't fit the rest of her. Back in the car, Dwayne tapped his pen against his knee. She was living two lives. Meredith nodded. The public one everyone saw. The student, the waitress, the neighbor. And the private one, someone's secret. Dwayne glanced sideways. You think it was a relationship? She was getting money. Consistently. In cash. From someone who didn't want their name attached. That's not charity. That's control. Meredith stared out the windshield at the gray afternoon. Something was gnawing at her gut. Amber wasn't running a scam. She wasn't stupid, but she had been afraid. The way she left everything out in the open. No password. No hiding. Almost like she knew someone would be coming after her. She was preparing to leave, Meredith said. And someone couldn't let her go. The sun had started to break through the clouds as detectives Meredith Cole and Dwayne Mercer pulled into a tidy cul-de-sac in the Rosewood subdivision. Rows of two-story brick homes stood like obedient soldiers behind freshly mowed lawns and hanging flower baskets. From the outside, Cheryl and Robert Delaney's house looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. White trim, rocking chairs on the porch, an American flag fluttering slightly in the breeze. But Meredith knew better. The most dangerous lies were the ones hiding behind smiles and symmetry. She knocked on the door with two sharp raps. A moment later, it opened to reveal Cheryl Delaney, a woman in her early 50s with tired eyes and perfectly styled hair that had started to frizz at the edges from the humidity. Her lips curled into a polite smile when she saw the badges, then faltered. Mrs. Delaney? Meredith asked gently. Cheryl nodded slowly. Yes. We're with Rainier PD. May we come in? Cheryl didn't speak. She simply stepped aside and gestured them in with a faint motion of her hand. The house smelled like vanilla candles and lemon cleaner. Meredith noticed the faint traces of a celebration. A half-deflated gold balloon, a cake stand on the counter, an empty bottle of red wine next to two glasses. In the living room, Robert Delaney sat on a recliner watching ESPN with the volume low. He was a broad-shouldered man with graying temples and thick forearms. The kind of man who looked like he'd been strong his whole life and now carried the weight of it. When he saw the detectives, he muted the TV and stood up. Is something wrong? He asked, voice gruff but steady. Meredith took a breath. Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, we're sorry to inform you that your niece, Amber Delaney, was found deceased in her apartment this morning. We're investigating it as a homicide. For a second, everything was still. Cheryl's face went blank. Robert's eyes flicked from his wife to Meredith and back again. What? Cheryl whispered. Her voice barely made a sound. Robert dropped back onto the recliner. Dead? What the hell are you talking about? We're still collecting evidence, Dwayne said quietly, but we believe she died sometime last night between 9 and 11 p.m. Cheryl slowly sat down on the armrest of the couch. Her hand went to her chest. Not dramatically, not performatively, just stunned. Meredith watched her closely. She was supposed to come for dinner, Cheryl said finally, her voice hollow. Yesterday was our anniversary. 20 years. We invited her over. She said she'd be here by 7, but she never showed up. You didn't try to check on her? Meredith asked. Robert shook his head. We called. She didn't answer. Figured she'd change her mind. Amber was independent. Had she seemed upset lately? Mention any problems? Boyfriends? Enemies? The couple exchanged a glance that didn't last more than a second, but Meredith caught it. No, nothing like that, Robert said too quickly. She was a good girl. Went to school. Worked hard. Did she ever talk to you about someone giving her money? Meredith asked. Cheryl's eyebrows knitted. Money. Cash. Regularly. In specific amounts. Cheryl frowned. No, I know. We helped her a little when she first moved out, but she got a job. Said she was managing fine. Robert nodded in agreement, but his eyes avoided Meredith's completely. And you were both home all evening? Dwayne asked, pen hovering. Yes, Cheryl said, almost too quickly. We had dinner, opened a bottle of wine, watched a movie. It was just the two of us. No guests. Meredith asked. No. No one to verify? It was a private anniversary, Robert answered. Just us. Meredith's eyes swept the room. On the mantel sat a framed photo of Amber, maybe 13, smiling between Cheryl and Robert in front of this very house. How long did she live with you? Meredith asked. Since she was 12, Cheryl replied. After her parents died in that car crash. We raised her, and she moved out. About a year ago, Robert said, finally making eye contact. She wanted space. Her own life. We supported that. Meredith gave a tight nod, but her mind was spinning. The $500. The cash. The lies. As they stepped out onto the porch, Dwayne leaned in. You buying any of that? Not a word, Meredith said. Back at the station, Meredith tossed her soaked raincoat over the back of her chair and pulled her hair into a ponytail with a practiced snap of her wrist. The smell of old coffee and printer toner filled the air. Outside, the drizzle had picked up again, another gray sheet sweeping over Rainier like a cleansing that never came. Dwayne sat across from her, flipping through a stack of bank statements. Check this out, he said, tapping the page. Every month, exactly on the 15th, Amber had a $500 cash deposit. 8 months straight. No listed employer, no digital trail, just anonymous cash. Meredith leaned in. It wasn't from her bakery job. That money came from someone who didn't want to be traced. Whoever it was, Dwayne said they were consistent. Like a damn subscription service. Meredith exhaled slowly. We're not talking about a one-time handout. This was routine. Structured. Someone was taking care of her, or paying her off. They stared at the dates again. The timeline synced perfectly, starting 8 months ago, right around when she moved out of the Delaney house. Right around when she started living better, as the bakery manager put it. Someone was buying her silence, Meredith said. Dwayne rubbed his temple. Or buying her company. They both knew what that meant. Amber was young, pretty, and vulnerable. Raised in a home where trust blurred with loyalty. If someone had been grooming her under the guise of protection, it might explain everything, especially why she never told anyone. Meredith pulled out the evidence log from Amber's apartment. One item caught her eye, a receipt from the Golden Lily jewelry store, dated 3 weeks prior. Total, $432. For a student on a waitress income, she murmured, that's a lot of sparkle. What did she buy? Dwayne asked, scooting over. Don't know yet, Meredith replied. But we're going to find out. She opened Amber's cracked phone again. No password. No locked files. Like the girl hadn't been hiding from the outside world. Just someone specific. As Meredith scrolled through her messages, she paused at a contact with no name. Just the letter R and a heart emoji. The text had been deleted. But forensics had already pulled the data. A folder was waiting in the system. Meredith opened it and scanned the conversation. R, can you make it tonight? Amber, not sure. Cheryl, suspicious. R, she doesn't know anything. I left the money in the usual place. Amber, I need more. I told you. R, we'll talk in person. Come over. It's our anniversary. Cheryl's cooking. Amber, okay. But we need a serious talk. R, don't get dramatic. Just be there. Meredith sat back slowly. Anniversary, she repeated. He said it was our anniversary. Cheryl was cooking. Who else would that be but Robert Delaney? Dwayne's mouth dropped open slightly. Wait, you think? Meredith nodded. He was the one paying her. And they weren't just having dinners. She pushed away from the desk, her jaw tight. He was sleeping with her. His own niece. Well, not by blood, Dwayne said cautiously. Meredith shot him a look. He raised her since she was 12, Dwayne. Blood or not, that's grooming. They both fell silent. Then Dwayne asked, if that's true, and Cheryl found out? Meredith didn't answer. She didn't have to. The campus cafeteria at Rainier County College buzzed with the usual midday energy. Students scarfing down cheap sandwiches, others glued to laptops, earbuds dangling. But at the far corner, seated alone by the window, with a half-eaten granola bar and a psychology textbook open in front of her, sat Kesha Daniels. Meredith spotted her instantly. Bright pink braids, a hoodie 3 sizes too big, and the unmistakable look of someone who hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen, and when she noticed the detectives approaching, she straightened with a nervous jolt. You're Kesha Daniels? Meredith asked gently. Kesha nodded, already trembling. You're here about Amber. Meredith and Dwayne pulled up chairs. We're trying to understand what happened, Meredith said. We know you were close. Kesha wiped at her face with her sleeve. She was my best friend. Since freshman orientation. We used to call each other soul sisters. She ever talked to you about problems? Dwayne asked. Anything recently? Kesha hesitated. Not exactly. She wasn't the type to vent. But something changed 8 months ago. She moved out of her aunt's house, suddenly had money, new clothes, nice shoes. I asked if she got a new job. She laughed and said she had a guardian angel. Did she ever say who? Meredith asked. Kesha shook her head. She never gave me a name, just said he helped her, that he was older, married, and couldn't be seen with her. She said he'd taken care of her since she was a little girl. Meredith's stomach dropped. She told you that? Since childhood. Yeah, I thought maybe he was a teacher or I don't know, someone from church. But then one night, a few weeks ago, we were at a party and she got drunk. She cried on my shoulder, said she was in love with him, that he promised to leave his wife, that he was finally going to take her away. Dwayne leaned forward. Did she show you a picture? Kesha nodded. Once. Just his back. They were kissing. He had dark skin, short-cropped hair, kind of built. Maybe in his 40s. Looked like her uncle. Meredith and Dwayne exchanged glances. Did she say anything about this week? Meredith pressed. Kesha swallowed hard. She didn't want to go to their house for dinner. So it was their anniversary, and she felt sick just thinking about it. But he insisted. Said if she didn't show, Cheryl would get suspicious. Did she seem scared? Dwayne asked. No, Kesha whispered. She seemed done, like she was ready to end it. And he wasn't. Kesha looked down. No, I think he was losing control. Meredith stood slowly, her voice low. Thank you, Kesha. You've helped more than you know. As they walked back to the car, the pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was uglier than either of them had expected. By the time Meredith and Dwayne reached the Golden Lily Jewelry Boutique, the rain had stopped, but the air still carried a heavy tension, as if the storm had only moved indoors. Golden Lily sat nestled between a nail salon and an insurance office on Main Street. Inside, the shop was lined with velvet displays, glass cases, and the faint scent of rosewood polish. An elderly woman with a name tag that read Margie looked up from behind the counter, squinting through her bifocals. We're with Rainier PD, Meredith said, flashing her badge. We're following up on a recent purchase. A young woman, Amber Delaney, came in about 3 weeks ago. Margie's face shifted from confusion to recognition. Oh yes, I remember her. Pretty girl. Sweet. Came in alone. Said she needed something special for a man. Dwayne stepped closer. Do you recall what she bought? The woman turned to the drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a receipt log. Here, May 25th. 1 pair of custom engraved cufflinks. Sterling silver. Paid in full. She was very specific about the date for pickup. Meredith raised an eyebrow. What date? June 15th. Margie replied without hesitation. She said it had to be ready by then. I asked if it was for Father's Day, and she kind of laughed. Said it was for a very special man in her life. And the engraving? Dwayne asked, already knowing the answer. Margie leaned in. Initials, RD, and the date. 6.15. Meredith's jaw tightened. She didn't even need to say it aloud. Robert Delaney. June 15th. Their wedding anniversary. As they stepped back outside, Meredith inhaled sharply, her mind racing. She bought him cufflinks for the anniversary he shared with his wife. And then he had dinner with Cheryl, Dwayne added. Or said he did. Meredith looked out over the town, her voice low. Amber wasn't just a fling. She thought it meant something. They returned to the precinct just as the sky began to darken again, clouds rolling back in like judgment. Meredith ordered a full analysis on Amber's phone data and pulled security camera footage from surrounding streets. But the real question now wasn't whether Robert had been involved with Amber. It was who knew and what they had done about it. They were halfway through reviewing the pharmacy records, verifying Cheryl's claim that she was out buying aspirin during the time of Amber's death, when a tech popped into the office holding a folder. Recovered messages, he said, dropping them on Meredith's desk. From Amber's deleted thread. Meredith flipped through the printout, scanning quickly. The final messages exchanged the night of June 15th painted a grim picture. Amber, I need more. I can't keep doing this. Or, we'll talk tonight. Just come by. Cheryl's cooking. It'll look normal. Amber, I'm serious, Robert. This ends one way or another. Or, you wouldn't do that to me. Don't threaten me. Amber, I'm not. I'm done. Meredith exhaled slowly. She went to that house planning to walk away. And maybe Cheryl heard everything. Dwayne said, voice flat. Meredith nodded. Or maybe she read it. They sat in silence for a long moment. The shadows in the room deepened. The lines between family and betrayal, love and control, blurred into something far more dangerous. Whatever had happened that night, it hadn't just been a family dinner. It had been a reckoning. The rain returned just as Detectives Meredith Cole and Dwayne Mercer pulled up in front of the Delaney house. The porch light was already on, casting a weak yellow glow across the driveway. Meredith stared up at the windows, her gut twisting. She didn't expect Cheryl to confess. Not yet. But she was ready to push. This wasn't just about a forbidden relationship anymore. This was about the boiling point, the moment where betrayal stops being emotional and becomes physical. Cheryl opened the door before they knocked. She looked smaller than before, somehow folded into herself. Her makeup was gone. Her hair was tied back, flat and dull. Her eyes, though, were wide open, alert, waiting. Detectives, she said, stepping back. Meredith nodded politely. Thank you for letting us stop by again. We need to clarify a few things. Of course, Cheryl said quietly. Come in. The house felt colder this time. The leftover celebration had been cleared away. No more cake stand, no wine glasses. Just the ticking of the living room clock, each second thudding like a warning. Robert's not home, Cheryl said, almost as a question. That's fine, Meredith replied. Actually, it's better. They sat in the same spot as before. Cheryl perched on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't fidget. She didn't look away. Mrs. Delaney, Meredith began, her tone calm but direct. We've recovered messages between Amber and Robert. Messages that indicate they had an intimate relationship, that he was giving her money, but they met the night she died. Cheryl didn't react. Not at first. Dwayne added, we also spoke to Amber's best friend, Kesha. She confirmed that Amber believed Robert was going to leave you, that they were planning a future together. A long silence. Then Cheryl spoke. I suspected for a while, she said, voice barely more than a whisper. The late-night phone calls. The way he looked at her when he thought I wasn't watching. But I told myself I was imagining it, that I was jealous of the girl I helped raise. Her voice cracked on the word raise, but she didn't cry. Her eyes remained glassy, unreadable. And then Meredith asked gently. June 15th, Cheryl whispered. Our anniversary. I was baking his favorite lemon cake. He went upstairs to shower and left his phone on the kitchen counter. It buzzed. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But I looked. She took a trembling breath. It was Amber. Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you. And I opened their conversation. It was all there. Everything. Promises. Threats. Photos. She paused, eyes dropping to her lap. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I told them I was heading to church early. Just like every Friday. Dwayne leaned forward. But you didn't go to church. Cheryl shook her head. I sat in my car, across the street from our house. I watched her pull up. I watched Robert open the door and hug her, like she belonged there more than I did. And then, I waited, Cheryl said softly, for 2 hours. She came out crying. I followed her, just to talk, just to understand. She let me into her apartment, but the moment I stepped in, she knew why I was there. What happened? Meredith asked. Cheryl's hands gripped her knees. Her knuckles turned white. She didn't deny it, didn't apologize. She laughed in my face, said he'd never loved me, said I was old, boring, and couldn't give him what she could. She told me they were going to move away together, that he promised her a new life. Her voice tightened. I told her she was lying. She said I could check his phone again, that I'd see the one-way ticket receipts. And then, Meredith said, her voice barely above a whisper. I snapped, Cheryl admitted. I don't remember grabbing the knife. It was just on the table. She shoved me, I shoved back, and then she swallowed, her throat thick. She collapsed. I remember the sound of her head hitting the floor more than anything else. And the blood. So much blood. Meredith sat quietly. Let the silence expand. Cheryl continued, voice distant now. I had gloves in my bag, latex ones. My hands are sensitive to cleaning chemicals. I always carry a few. I used them. I knocked over the vase, the table. Try to make it look like a break-in. Then I went to the pharmacy and bought aspirin. I got home and acted like nothing had happened. Why didn't you tell us? Dwayne asked gently. Cheryl finally looked up, her eyes red but dry. Because I couldn't bear to see him. Robert looked at me like I was a monster. Even after everything he did to me, I still loved him. Meredith stood slowly. Cheryl Delaney, you're under arrest for the murder of Amber Delaney. You have the right to remain silent. As Dwayne cuffed her, Cheryl didn't resist. Her shoulders sagged in what looked like relief. One request, she said, just before they reached the door. Meredith paused. What is it? Don't tell him it was me. Let him find out at the station. I don't want to see his face when he realizes what he turned me into. Robert Delaney showed up at the Rainier Police Department half an hour after the call. He walked in wearing a pressed blue button-down, his sleeves neatly cuffed, and his wedding ring still shining. He looked like a man trying desperately to keep control, to hold onto some illusion of normalcy. Like this was just a misunderstanding, a routine check-in, not the unraveling of everything he knew. Meredith met him in the interview room. No cuffs, no two-way mirror, just four white walls and a truth that waited like a shadow in the corner. Detective Cole, he said nervously, adjusting his collar. The officer who called, he said this was about Cheryl? Have a seat, Mr. Delaney. He did, gripping the edge of the chair like he was preparing to hear bad news. But he still had no idea how deep it went. Meredith sat across from him, folded her hands on the table, and looked him in the eye. Your wife, Cheryl, has been arrested for the murder of Amber Delaney. The color drained from Robert's face. What? He choked. No, that can't be. She confessed, Meredith said calmly. She went to Amber's apartment the night of June 15th. After discovering the messages on your phone, Robert's jaw dropped. My phone. She saw everything, Robert. The messages, the money transfers, the plans to leave. She told us she followed Amber home and confronted her. The argument turned violent. Cheryl stabbed her. He stood, then sat back down immediately as if his legs had given out. His hands covered his face. Oh my God. Oh my God. Meredith leaned forward, her voice softening just enough to cut through the silence. She asked us not to tell you. Said she didn't want to see your face when you realized what she'd done. Robert shook his head. This is my fault. It's all my fault. Yes, Meredith said quietly. It is. He looked up at her, eyes glistening. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't plan it. I didn't force her. She was 19, Meredith snapped. And you were a father figure. You raised her. You created a boundary and then destroyed it. You didn't just betray your wife. You broke a child who trusted you. Robert couldn't respond. His mouth opened, but no words came. Only shame. Finally, he whispered, Can I see her? Meredith shook her head. She doesn't want to see you. Not yet. He nodded, the truth settling like wet concrete in his chest. I'll wait. When he left the room, he looked like a man walking into exile. Alone, stripped of everything, carrying nothing but the weight of what he'd done. And Meredith sat in the quiet, watching the door close behind him. Another life shattered, not by murder, but by choices made in silence. The courtroom was silent, save for the ticking of the wall clock and the faint shuffle of papers. Cheryl Delaney stood before the judge, hands folded in front of her, wrists free of cuffs for the sake of dignity. She wore a beige prison-issue dress, hair pinned back, no makeup. Her face was pale but calm, like a woman who had already made peace with the consequences. Detective Meredith Cole sat toward the back, arms crossed, watching everything unfold. She didn't come for every sentencing, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about justice, it was about closure, about seeing the end of something that never should have started. Robert Delaney was also there, seated 2 rows ahead of her. He hadn't shaved, his posture slouched, a man aged 10 years and 10 days. He hadn't spoken to Cheryl. Hadn't even tried. But he showed up every court date like he owed it to someone, maybe to Amber, maybe to his conscience. The judge, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, looked down from the bench. "Mrs. Delaney," he said evenly, "you have pleaded guilty to the charge of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Amber Delaney. The court has reviewed your statement, your cooperation with law enforcement, and your lack of prior criminal history." Cheryl didn't blink. Her lips were pressed in a thin line. The judge continued, "This court does not dismiss the gravity of your actions. A young woman is dead. A family is destroyed. And while the circumstances surrounding your crime offer context, they do not absolve the crime itself." Meredith leaned forward slightly. She'd heard 100 variations of this speech before, but today it felt personal. "I hereby sentence you to 8 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. The gavel struck once, hard and final. Cheryl didn't flinch. As the bailiff approached to escort her out, Cheryl turned. Just for a moment. Her eyes met Robert's. He didn't look away, but she did. She dropped her gaze and walked out of the courtroom like someone accepting a life sentence, not just in prison, but in memory. Afterward, Meredith stepped out onto the courthouse steps, the summer sun suddenly too bright. Robert stood near the railing, gripping it with both hands, staring out at nothing. "She's not a monster," he said without looking at Meredith. Meredith nodded. "No, she's not. She loved Amber," he continued, "like her own daughter. And you broke that," Meredith said, her voice low but steady. "You didn't kill Amber, Robert, but you lit the match." He didn't argue, just nodded. "I sold the house," he said after a moment. "Proceeds are going to Cheryl's attorney. The rest into a trust for when she gets out." Meredith turned to him. "And you?" "I'm leaving Georgia," he said. "I can't breathe here anymore." "Where will you go?" He let out a hollow laugh. "Where no one knows my name." Meredith didn't press. Some people didn't deserve forgiveness, but everyone deserved distance. That night, back at home, she sat on the porch watching her 12-year-old son race around the yard with a neighbor's dog. Laughter echoed in the air. It was the sound of innocence, something Amber never got to keep. Meredith sipped her tea and closed her eyes for a moment. The Delaneys weren't evil. They were human. And sometimes that was worse, because it meant any of us were capable of crossing a line we never imagined. Betrayal never comes from strangers. It comes from the ones we love. A week after the sentencing, the town of Rainier began to forget. The news stations stopped running updates. The neighbors moved on to gossip about summer barbecues and school board elections. Sweet Bella's bakery returned to its regular rhythm, cinnamon rolls and all. The apartment where Amber Delaney died had already been listed for rent again. No mention of what happened between those walls. But Detective Meredith Cole hadn't forgotten. She never did. She sat alone in her office one evening, long after the rest of the squad had clocked out. The blinds were half drawn. The desk lamp cast a warm circle of light over her notes. Case closed, paperwork filed, every detail in its place. And still, something gnawed at her. Not regret, not even guilt, just sorrow. The quiet kind that settles in your bones when you've seen too much of what people do to each other when no one's looking. She picked up a photo from the folder, a picture recovered from Amber's apartment. It showed Amber at 13, standing between Robert and Cheryl on the front steps of their home. Her smile was shy but hopeful. Her arms were wrapped around both of them, like she truly believed they'd never let her go. Meredith ran a finger over the edge of the photo. "They were all in that house," she whispered, "and no one saw it coming." But that wasn't true. Cheryl had seen it. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. Meredith thought about all the little lies that added up. Robert telling himself it was love, Cheryl telling herself it was paranoia, Amber telling herself he meant it. No one woke up planning to ruin a life. But somewhere along the way, one lie became 2, then 10, then a truth no one could look at without bleeding. She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the parking lot. A mother was buckling her toddler into a car seat. A man jogged by, earbuds in, lost in his own world. Life went on. It always did. But beneath that rhythm, Meredith saw what most people didn't, the cracks, the silences, the secrets people stuffed into drawers and hoped no one ever opened. She thought of Cheryl in her prison cell, reading her Bible by dim light, of Robert somewhere in another state, living under another name. Of Amber, buried in a plot just outside town, with no one left to bring her flowers. And she thought of herself, a mother, a detective, a woman who had made it her life's work to sift through human wreckage and try to find the truth in the rubble. She turned away from the window and gathered her things. The case was over, but the lesson stayed. Love without honesty is a loaded gun. And sometimes, the people who swear to protect you are the very ones who pull the trigger.